Hey, what's happening, everybody? It's me, Crazyfrankie, and I'd like to welcome you to my Week 2 4 key game picks. Before we talk about Week number 2, I don't know what can I say about what happened in Week number 1. There was a lot of storylines, a lot of things that happened. It's really recapping Week 1. It's gonna be too much to talk about to recap because it deserves its own segment. So I'll make this short and sweet with some quick thoughts. The defending Super Bowl champions barely surviving the Cowboys, and then out of the most dumbest things ever, Jalen Carter spits on Dak Prescott. I mean, there's debate about that, whether if Dak Prescott did it first and all this blah, 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 but really, Jalen Carter knew what he was doing. He did it, and believe it or not, that he got ejected so early in the game, the league counted that as a suspension. They fined him, and then they suspended him for one game, which was really that football game. So he's actually going to play in Week number 2 for the Eagles defensively against the Chiefs, and that kind of is a big deal because the Eagles and Chiefs meet up in this week, and that is going to be one of the key games I will get into later on in the video. What can I? Another storyline that came in from Week number 1 obviously was Michael Parsons in Green Bay, and really, if you're a Packers fan, you gotta love what they did to the Lions. They basically kicked the crap out of them in Week number 1. And obviously, the way they look now, the Packers look dangerous. It's too early in the season to say that they have now become the NFC favorites now in the conference, but they definitely look scary. This team is young, they're healthy, and it's going to be hard to say how can you not make them the NFC favorites. And if you're a Lions fan, is it time to panic? I'm going to say yes, it's time to panic. Even though it was only week 1. But I would think it's time to panic because your offensive and defensive coordinators, you're starting out and you only put up 13 points and the defense couldn't stop the Packers offense all game long. This is troubling if you're a Lions fan. And the Lions is one of the favorites in the NFC, and it's starting to look like now they're starting to look like the same old Lions of past. So if you're a Lions fan, I would say it is kind of time to panic because they better figure this out soon and be to what the Lions are supposed to be, and that is a good football team, but it's starting to look like they look like the same. The Packers really make them look like the same old Lions. So Lions fans, I would panic a little bit here because your offensive and defensive coordinators better figure this thing out fast because if they don't, you're not even going to snip the playoffs the way it's looking right now. Other things. How about the comeback by the Bills? I don't know if I want to call it a comeback or a Ravens choke job. Ravens had a 15-point lead in the fourth quarter, and then all of a sudden, they gagged. A lot of it with Derrick Henry fumble, that was part of it. And you could also debate whether there was a fourth and 3 when the Bills defense hasn't been able to stop the run all game long and giving it to Derrick Henry. Could have given it to Derrick Henry to redeem himself, but they chose to punt it away late in the fourth quarter, and the Bills took advantage of it. And they ended up winning that game by a field goal. Ooh, kind of a devastating loss for the Ravens. I don't know if I want to say that this is going to be a sign of things to come. Look, I still believe they're going to win the AFC North, but I just think to me that game against the Bills kind of hurts their confidence. As you know, they lost to the Bills in the divisional round last season, and you start to look now, where does this Raven team go from here? Look, it might be a little bit of a loss of confidence a bit, but obviously they got the Browns in Week number 2. This should be a game where they need to beat the crap out of the Browns and just to get things back on track. How about Aaron Rodgers' debut for the Steelers playing against the Jets, Justin Fields? And really, that was really a back and forth affair because really both teams are terrible, to be honest. And somehow Chris Boswell's 60-yard field goal was enough to beat the Jets. So Aaron Rodgers gets sort of his revenge on his former team, but the Steelers really don't look like a great football team at all. They're pretty mediocre, to be honest. So yeah, Aaron Rodgers gets some sort of retribution. And of course, the Monday night game wasn't really that great of a game for Caleb Williams. In the first half, the Bears looked like they could have had the Vikings on the ropes, but somehow, some way, the Bears forgot to play football in the second half, and somehow J.J. McCarthy threw lasers and darts, and somehow the Minnesota Vikings stole the game from them. Wow. You got to wonder now if this is even more not even a loss of confidence now for this Bears team. I know they've gone some different coaching changes the last 3 seasons, but this is not helping at all. And I would blame a lot of that on the coaching. Anyways, too much that went on in week number 1. We need to get into week number 2. All right, let's begin with the first key game, and that is the Thursday night game between the Commanders and the Packers. The Packers are a 3.5-point favorite, and I would say that's about right. Jordan Love was 188. Jordan had 188 yards, 2 touchdown passes, and he basically picked apart that Lions defense. And that is going to be a huge question mark for the Commanders defense and how they find a way to stop to really get to Jordan Love, because the Lions really didn't get to him that much all game long, and I don't know if Washington's going to be able to pass rush again and try to get to him. Now, Jaden Daniels went 19 of 30, 233 yards, 1 touchdown, and no interceptions. It was kind of a mediocre win for them, to be honest with you. I didn't think it was all that impressive, the Commanders beating the Giants. The Giants are a terrible team to begin with. If the Commanders are going to pull the upset here, their defense has got to find a way to get to Jordan Love and find a way to... Now, Jacobs didn't really have that much of a great running day. The Lions were able to stop the run a bit, but it was really the passing that really killed them. I just think that if the Commanders are to pull an upset against the Packers, their pass rush has got to get to Jordan Love here. And Jaden Daniels is going to have to really work his magic against this scary Packer defense. I'm picking the Packers here. Their defense is scary. And Jaden Daniels is going to have to pull a rabbit out of his rear end to find a way to pick apart their defense, because I don't know if they can, because that Packer defense, I know I'm giving them a lot of praise here, because I don't know, they still have to play the more elite teams of the conference still, and in the AFC as well. But the defense is going to be the reason they're going to win this game. I don't think it's going to be that high scoring, to be honest with you. I think it might be like a 17-14 type of game or something like that, 2017, whatever. The Packers defense, I could see getting the job done. I think it's going to be a much closer game. It's going to be a closer game than you will think, but the Packers defense will stop Jaden Daniels here. I like the Packers in this one at -3.5. Take the Packers in this one here, Packers over the Commanders. Key game number 2, going into the NFC North, the Bears versus the Lions. The Lions are a 5.5-point favorite, and I think that number is probably going to go down to 5, maybe 4.5, maybe even 4. Caleb Williams in the loss last week against the Vikings was 21 of 35, 210 yards, 1 touchdown. Surprisingly, he didn't throw an interception. Now, Jared Goff was 31 of 39, 225 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. It's put up or shut up time now for the Lions here. If they're going to make any sort of statement, and I know that Ben Johnson, their former offensive coordinator, is really wanting some sort of I don't know if I want to call it revenge or some sort of like any sort of payback or anything like that. He's trying to find a way to beat the Lions. He knows Jared Goff because he coached him. But the problem with the Bears is their defense. The Bears defense really just took an enormous dump last week in the second half against the Vikings. And if there's ever a game where Jordan Goff, Gibbs and Montgomery and Laporta and that offense has to go off on somebody, it better be this football game. Because the way things now, if the Lions go 0-2, it's going to be, you better push that red panic alert button big time. I don't trust the Bears defense at all in this football game. Bears offense showed some signs of life in the first half against the Vikings, but in the second half they fell apart. Now they managed to get it within 3 points against the Vikings, but obviously they just could not beat the Vikings in the final minute. Now, I can see the Lions offense getting back on track in this football game, but it's going to be close, to be honest with you. I apologize, there's a helicopter passing by. Forgive me for that noise in the background. It's definitely going to be a close football game. I don't see this game being a blowout at all. I think, to me, that the Lions working with these new coordinators, they had all preseason to figure this thing out, and yet they're still trying to figure things out. I'm going to go with the Lions here. I think they'll win. They'll barely beat the Bears in this one here to get back to 500, because they need a win as much as badly as the Bears do. But I think the Lions get back on track in this one here. It's going to be a close game. The Lions may be favored by 5.5, but this game's going to be much closer than you would think. I'm going to go with the Lions here. I think they'll barely beat the Bears in this one here. The Lions at -5.5 to beat the Bears. Key game number 3, going into the AFC West. It is the Chargers versus the Raiders. The Chargers are a 3.5-point favorite in this one here, and I would say that's about right. But this is not your old bad Raiders team. Geno Smith, 24 of 34, 362 yards, 1 touchdown, but he was intercepted once. Raiders offense was decent last week against the Pats. And the Raiders have given the Chargers some fits in the last few seasons. And if there's ever a time for the Chargers to really have another good game, it's this one here. Now, Herbert, in a big victory last week against the Chiefs, the Chargers finally got off the schneid, losing 7 in a row against the Chiefs. He went 25 of 34, 318 yards, 3 touchdowns, but the big stat in that one was no turnovers. That was huge. And there's never going to be a time where they need to really have another good game. It's this one here, because the Raiders have given the Chargers a lot of fits in the last few seasons here. I think it's going to be a close game in this one as well. There's no way this game's a blowout here. It's going to be close. These two teams play each other very, very close. But I'm going to go with look, I know you're going to say I'm biased on this one here because I'm a Chargers fan, but I'm going to pick the Chargers here. I think they're starting to show some sort of culture now where they're finally starting to win football games that normally they choke. Or they charger, whatever you want to say. I'm going to pick the Chargers at -3.5 to beat the Raiders here. I think the Chargers defense played very well against the Chiefs here, and I think they'll do well against the Raiders as well here. I think, look, the Chargers will barely beat the Raiders. It's going to be a close game here. It's the Raiders home opener. It's one of the doubleheaders on Monday night. But I like the Chargers in this one here. They'll barely beat the Raiders. It's going to be a close game for sure. It's probably going to be low scoring in this one as well. But I like the Chargers to beat the Raiders here. It's going to be a very close one here. The Chargers, I can see them getting their second victory in this one here. But it's going to be close. Chargers over the Raiders. And finally, key game number 4, of course, the rematch of last year's Super Bowl, the Eagles versus the Chiefs. The Eagles are a slight 1.5-point favorite. Expect that number to go to 1 for sure. Jalen Hurts was 19 of 23, 152 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. Patrick Mahomes was 24 of 39, 258 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions in the loss against the Chargers last week. Big question marks on the Chiefs' offense here. You don't have Xavier Worry, and of course you still don't have Rice because of suspension. Injuries did piled up last week against for the Chiefs against the Chargers last week. But the Eagles wasn't that impressive. The Eagles did not play that impressive at all. I mean, they really struggled against the Cowboys, and they almost lost to the Cowboys if CeeDee Lamb hadn't to drop passes. And then, of course, you had Jalen Carter spitting on Dak Prescott. That kind of did hurt their defense as well. But yet, he's still going to play in this game. It's really 50-50 who wins this football game, to be sure. It's going to be a good one in Kansas City here. But I'm going to go with the Chiefs here at +1.5. The Chiefs are not, I don't see them going 0-2. They're going to be desperate for a win here, and they need a win desperately, even though it's only week 2. I could see Patrick Mahomes finding some sort of flaws in that Eagles defense, because even if they have Carter in this game, I could still see some way that Patrick Mahomes will find a way to pick apart that Eagles defense here. It's going to be a close game for sure, but I can see the Chiefs pulling off a victory here against the Eagles. They're going to be kind of desperate for a win, even though it's only week 2. I'm going to pick the Chiefs to beat the Eagles in this one here. I think they'll get some things back on track. Their running game will get going here. But I expect this game to be close. I'm going to pick the Chiefs +1.5 to beat the Eagles. All right, everybody, that wraps up my 4 key game picks for week number 2. Please check the description below for all of my week 2 picks, and I will see you guys next week when I make my picks for week number 3. Take care and enjoy your football weekend.